Hey there, YouTube. What's going on, Bear Nation? It's Bear with BearIndependent.com. Let's talk about if I only had 1 acre of land, what would I do? This is a combination of a response to several emails that I've gotten over the last few days, to a comment that Kyle from Survival Prepping for Normal People made on one of his Patreon videos, talking about suburban people versus homesteaders like myself, and also based upon my experiences of being a suburban homesteader in North Texas for several years. If I only had 1 acre, how would I set it up? What would I try and accomplish on that acre as far as food production? Well, in North Texas, we had 1/3 of an acre. And on that 1/3 of an acre, we had meat rabbits, meat chickens, laying hens, compost, raised beds, row crops, berry bushes, fruit trees, and mature nut trees in our 1/3 of an acre backyard in suburbia, man, suburbalon. That's like the suburbs in Babylon put together. And it's raining, so I'm sorry if the audio sucks. I'm doing the best that I can, all right? The first place I would start is a really basic but really powerful permaculture trifecta here. Laying hens, compost, and raised beds. Now, none of those things in of itself is very permaculture-y, but the application of those three in a system is very permaculture-y because it's permanent agriculture, right? It's awesome. Keep your laying hens in a coop with a run and load that run full of carbon. Oak leaves, sawdust, as long as it's not walnut, yard waste, pine shavings, whatever you got, carbon. Load it up, and those little velociraptors will turn that carbon into black soil like that, and they'll fertilize that soil, and they will pay you in eggs for the pleasure of making wonderful soil for you. Take that soil out of that coop and compost it along with your yard debris, your kitchen scraps, your whatever, man, whatever else you got, your local dirt. We had terrible dirt in North Texas. Terrible, dead, hard, red clay. Well, I broke that up and put it in my compost pile. And man, it wasn't very long that I had gigantic happy worms in my compost. Then you use that compost pile to feed your raised beds. We planted directly into compost in North Texas because, again, the soil was dead. And at one point, I had about 10 cubic yards of compost going in my suburban backyard at any one time. So your chickens feed the compost pile feeds the garden feeds you and the chickens. So you got this little triangle, this little trifecta of permaculture going. I would definitely start there, because out of that, you're getting your compost, you're getting your eggs, and if you have dual use birds, you're getting meat. And it's just a good system. It's worked for us. I am Torah observant, so I don't eat rabbits, but there's lots of people who do. And we made a lot of meat with meat rabbits in our backyard. And in fact, you can put rabbits in cages inside of your enclosure where your laying hens are, and some really wonderful things happen to your compost at that point as well. Rabbit manure is great for compost. It's great for the garden. It's not hot. You can top dress with it. It's good stuff. We also planted row crops. Meaning that we had corn and potatoes and green beans, row upon row upon row in our backyard. And we had a great experience with that. I mean, there's nothing like sweet corn right off the stalk, man. It's awesome. And so you can most certainly do that. And while all of this sounds kind of like fantasy land, yeah, whatever, but was it worth it? We had a family of 5. And we cut our grocery bill from $300 every time we went to the store to $180 every time we went to the store. Now, that's a 40% reduction in our grocery costs just because of what we raised in our backyards, with about maybe a half an hour a day of our input into it. And the other reason that we did this was predominantly to teach our children where food came from. That food does not come out of a cardboard box, does not come from a drive-through window or a styrofoam cup, that food comes out of the ground by the hand of our Creator. And so, definitely, I would do that. If you can, you could, if you have the room and you're not beholden to HOA covenants or land use restrictions or anything like that, you might consider getting a couple of goats for milk and for meat. Definitely, goats will eat all kinds of brush that you wouldn't think that could serve as food. They will eat it. Our goats would rather go eat weeds than eat sweet feed. So take that for what it's worth. You know, and when you get back to the gardening, right, if you're growing corn and you grow enough corn, you can use that corn or sorghum or milo or wild oats or whatever it is that you plant to feed your chickens. You know, all your garden scraps, chickens will eat it. All your table scraps, chickens will eat it. They're mini velociraptors. They're awesome. But goats also are good at converting stuff into meat and milk. And you don't need a lot of room for a goat. If you have an acre, it's entirely possible that you could have a couple of goats. A greenhouse would be a great place to start, both for seed starting, for transplanting into your garden, into your row crops, but also for continuous food production, that even during the winter, depending upon where you live, through application of things like solar batteries, using the thermal mass of water, so forth and so on, you can potentially grow food year-round. If you combine that with an aquaponics type system where we're producing protein from tilapia as well as vegetables from the greenhouse, awesome. If you took that greenhouse and put your rabbits in cages inside of there and then your chickens running around on the floor, now you've got meat, eggs, poultry, fish, and veggies all going under one roof. That could be a very powerful system for you. And I've seen this modeled in a couple of places. The Heritage Homestead outside of Waco, Texas has an excellent aquaponics system. Then I've also seen it discussed. Joel Salatin at Polyface Farms. So, and Joel Salatin, if you don't know who Joel Salatin is, he is a very cool dude. He is a, how does he self-describe? A conservative Christian libertarian lunatic farmer, capitalist lunatic farmer, something like that. Love the guy. Very, very wise man when it comes to growing food out of the ground. Highly recommended. And so on an acre, if all you have is an acre, you can pretty quickly get both meat and produce coming up out of the ground. I've done it. And so if I had on a third of an acre, we produced 40% of our family's groceries, family of 5, without being too intense about it. So if I had put my hand to the plow on 1 acre, if we just simply do the math, then I would have produced 120% of my family's calories, maybe more, in what, an hour, hour and a half of my time each day. And I find gardening therapeutic. I learned a lot about the therapy value of gardening from my buddy Squid Actual YouTube channel. And I've always been aware of that quote, you know, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Amen. But it's very cool to produce your own food. It's very cool to eat chicken wings that came off of your wife's roosters, who are the bane of your existence and that you shot in the face, and then prepared those wings. They are delicious. They are delicious. You know, fresh salad greens, wonderful. Homemade salsa, wonderful. And so if you only have an acre, you can still produce a lot of food. And the reason I felt compelled to make this video is, like I said, not everybody has 20 acres, 40 acres, 160 acres. Not everybody needs 20 acres, 40 acres, 160 acres. There's a lot of people who think they want to live out here, you know, where you're so deep into the nowhere that they got to pipe the sunshine into you. And they get out here and they're like, oh crap, this is not what I expected. It happens. I've seen it several times with people who have come out to this area and been like, nope, not doing it. Thanks, but no thanks, we're out. And so, it's a much larger lifestyle commitment to live in the middle of nowhere on acreage than it is to find an acre on the edge of town. B, it's much more attainable for a lot of people to get an acre, maybe 5 acres on the edge of town. I mean, if you have 5 acres, you can now think about adding, you know, you could get a mini dairy cow. You could have 2 acres of that in pasture for your cow. Or, you know, we have our Katahdin sheep are on a half of an acre. And we feed grain, but we could up that to an acre and they could self-support on 1 acre. It's 1/10 of an acre per head for Katahdins. Awesome, right? And so 5 acres, you could get a lot done. You can get a lot done on 1 acre. Now, we have over 20 acres, and in reality, I use about 3 acres daily. And I use about 7 acres weekly. And if I didn't ruck my property, I might not ever see the rest of it. Maybe once a quarter. Hey, I wonder what's going on back this side of the property. You know, I ruck my property, I walk my fence line. But if I didn't, you know, it's one of those things, it's an embarrassment of riches. I have all this available to me and I'm not even making use of it. That's the honest truth. You know, we have standing timber and hardwood forest and, you know, wildlife out there in the woods. It's just begging for me to shoot it and so that I can put it in the freezer. We have all of that by the hand of the Father, and it's awesome, but we don't necessarily need all of that to self-support. You know, an acre of land combined with good stewardship and not necessarily full-time hardcore stewardship, but good regular stewardship. You spend an hour a day on an acre of land in the pursuit of producing food, you would be amazed by the return on your investment. And so, if I only had an acre of land, I would definitely do chickens. I would definitely do compost. I would definitely do raised beds. And if you're not Torah observant, rabbits. If you are Torah observant, we've had great luck with turkeys. We also had meat birds in a mini meat bird tractor that held 10 meat birds, and we just drug that around our suburban backyard, and it worked great. So you can do that as well. Right? And then for real, consider row crops. You don't need, you know, a 60-acre section to grow corn. You can do it on a quarter of an acre. I've done it. And see, that's the other thing. You learn by doing, right? Because you need a certain critical mass of corn in order to get good pollination. Right? You learn that by doing. So I would encourage you, if you're in suburbia, start doing. If all you can afford is an acre of land or 3 acres of land, that's not a deal breaker. You can get a lot done on an acre of land, and you should not let the fact that you only have an acre or 2 or 5 stop you from living this type of self-reliant, independent lifestyle. It can definitely be done. We did it in the suburbs before we did it here in the middle of nowhere. And so that's what I would do if I only had 1 acre of land. Shalom and blessings, YouTube. Bear out.